welcome to the Esoteric Deathspiral.
Alright, Pterodactyl. Welcome to the Esoteric Music Deathspiral. We are back from a 2-week break because I wasn't feeling good and I passed out in my bed. So yeah, welcome back to our nominally bi-weekly series on every single Mars Volta album. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about their fourth album, the Bedlam in Goliath. Which, going along with their bizarre album names, this one is probably the most normal because, it's not some fucking weird word or some combination of weird words.
It's probably tied with Francis the Mute for the most normal album title.
Yeah, I was gonna say. But yeah, so this album is quite interesting. It's got a really odd backstory, which I'm just gonna sort of read out from memory. So basically, after recording Ambitexture, Omar Rodriguez Lopez went to Jerusalem where he bought this Ouija board and proceeded to use it with his bandmates at basically the end of every show on their tour as this sort of after show ritual. And in doing so, they uncovered this weird three split personality spirits in the Ouija board, and eventually bad stuff kept happening as they tried to record this album. Omar's studio flooded twice, recordings would disappear, the producer had a nervous breakdown, or I think it was the recording engineer, one of those two had a nervous breakdown. So yeah, this album apparently had a really nightmarish production, which did it pay off? Maybe. But yeah, so regarding lineup changes for this album, it's mostly not that different, with one big exception: the departing of classic Mars Volta drummer John Theodore and his replacement Thomas Pridgen. Now, I want to sort of state that John Theodore's sort of style was, because with all the Mars Volta drummers, I think each one had sort of a very unique style to them. John Theodore was the power, he had just this really sort of forceful way of drumming. And with Thomas Pridgen, his specialty is speed. He'd get really fast on this album.
His specialty is being insane.
Yeah, he is kind of sort of the speed demon of this band. And I'll go into more detail about sort of the later drummer of this band sort of once we get to the Tourniquet episode. But
D'Anthony Parks.
Yeah, him. So, right. So this album is the fourth. The fourth of this album, and if I had to rank it on sort of the scale from worst to best, I would rank this album sort of third in sort of the list. It's the third best, sort of in front of their last two and behind Francis, Deloused, and Ambitexture, because I think this album definitely has a lot going for it, but there also are certain things that sort of are symbolic of sort of the later faults that later albums would have. And I think we'll go into more detail with that when we get into the actual individual tracks. But I still think this album is quite good. It's definitely got its own sort of unique identity to it when compared to sort of maybe their other albums. But yeah.
Max has not said any words beyond screaming, so I'll let them go next.
For me, I think this is probably my third favorite as well, behind Francis the Mute and Deloused in the Comatorium, or switch those rather. But I think this album is probably it's great. It has some of the strongest hooks that that the band has ever delivered. The hooks on this album are just so infectious.
It's got quite the that I think that's very interesting about it, is that a lot of the songs. I think this is probably, it's not, I wouldn't say this is their most straightforward album, but I think this is definitely sort of was a turning point for the band, where sort of the really long 16-minute epics kind of died down, and they started to go into more sort of like a pop thing. Like even on sort of the later albums, they never really had songs that like went over 10 minutes. And this is actually the first album that doesn't have a song that goes over 10 minutes, which I think is definitely definitely a sign that they were kind of going for something different.
Yeah, I
There's
really like.
Oh, you can go.
I really like how this album has its own identity. Like it's kind of going for more of a pop feel, but it's also more ambitious in some regards. Where you have a lot of very unique sounds that you haven't really seen the band utilize that much.
Yeah.
It's very sonically interesting in that regard.
Right. It kind of, I think definitely like you can hear a lot of sort of the I don't know, because I said before this album had a reportedly nightmarish production, and I can feel you can hear that a lot in this album, especially with how crazy it can get when it decides to. But yeah, I think definitely I don't know, it's a lot, again, with the hooks and stuff, it really does have just like some really great sort of more poppy songs, I think, definitely when compared to sort of especially with like song with like ambitexture, where like over half the album was like songs that were not insanely long, but certainly lengthy. Yeah. But so do you have any general thoughts, Ray?
I have. Okay. The first time that I listened to this album, I was not able to make it all the way through. I heard Tourniquet Man, and then I stopped.
I think you were telling me about this a while ago, but yeah.
And I do not hate this album. I think it's like a 6 out of 10. I think it is an above average album, but I think it is a massive downgrade from their first 3 albums. This is the first album with songs that doesn't have a song over 10 minutes, but it's also their first album that has songs I think are too long and songs that could be outright cut.
Wow. All right. Very, very strong words here.
Yeah. But, I'm coming in hot.
All right, this should be fun. Okay, so I think definitely with this song, because of the fact that all the song names are really weird, and because the fact that the Wikipedia page like provides like a sort of an explanation of what the song names are, I want to introduce that for every song. So yeah, are we ready to get into the individual tracks?
Yeah.
I should quickly revise what I said. I shouldn't say a massive downgrade, but yeah, a step down.
All right.
But yeah, let's get into the tracks.
Okay, so the first track, Abarinkula, I think. All right, the note is for an Abarinkula is a special kind of drum used in Nigeria. Also, Abarinkula can be translated as non-believer. So yeah, already interesting. I think definitely I'm gonna start with my thoughts for like an opening track. This is like probably like the most straightforward and like sort of out the gate strength that this band has really ever done on an opening track. Like right from the get-go, like not even like a second in, the song is just pounding on you with like just like the crazy sort of like centric wailing with just like the instruments in the back just like providing this pretty sort of strong sort of downward chord progression, because on their previous albums they never really had like a really like huge right from the get-go explosion of sound. Like D. Loust had not Understudy, the Sonic Lumiere, yeah, with its sort of really slow keyboard build up. Francis the Mute had Cygnus with its like kind of slow sort of guitar melody build up, and Ambitexture had Vicarious Atonement with its kind of sort of atmospheric kind of crazy sound, not crazy, but like sort of atmospheric sounding sort of like sound collage. But with this, it's just like right from the get-go, just hitting you straight in the face with just like the I'm not going to try to do it because it's like crazy. But yeah, really just like right in your face sound. And I think that kind of I really like that. Just like right from the get go, it's just right this really sort of powerful song, and then when you get to the chorus, it's like this not chorus, but when we get to the verse, it's just this really kind of like sort of more sort of subdued riffing with sort of some interesting sort of interplay between the guitars and the keyboards. And then you get to the end of the song, and like it completely changes from like this kind of funky sort of rock thing to like this Middle Eastern vibe. Like it's almost a completely different song, and I just that's pretty cool. Like it's Mars Volta songs do that a lot, where they do to trying to switch tone, but they usually don't sort of like have such juxtaposition like within their songs, and I think that's definitely like a strength that this one has. Yeah.
My thoughts are that it's good that they're doing something different, but I don't like it as much. I'm kind of missing that build up. This album, it starts and then it's instant screaming. And on this album, this is the first time where I have found Cedric hard to listen to at points. Like I feel like he's like just way too nasally.
Right, that's the
On
one
some
thing.
in some parts. I should clarify. There are parts that I like quite a bit. The verses on this song, he sounds pretty good. And like even the chorus, I've gotten more used to it on subsequent listens. But I remember the first time I listened to it, I was like, "Oh god." And I think it didn't help that like the chorus of this song, I feel like I like the guitar part because it's kind of simple. What I don't
Yeah.
like is that it feels like the drums and keyboards are trying to compensate for it and are just going way too crazy. And it's like, no, you've just thrown me into this. Let me get some grounding first. Like, is this not a concept album? Do you not want me to be immersed?
Yeah.
And like overall, this is like a good song. Like I said, I've gotten more used to the chorus over time, and I've always liked the verses, and the outro at the end is cool. I really like the tone shift. I like the saxophones that are coming in, and some of those Middle Eastern instruments, and like some of the and just I like the fact that it just kind of goes straight into a big instrumental outro after just doing uh, a chorus and then 3 sets of verse and chorus. However, I still have a big problem with the structure of this song, and that's that this chorus does not need to be repeated 4 times. Like, I think it would have been better if they just had like a quick build up like they had on Francis the Mute, and like a distinct intro, and then go into the verse and all that kind of stuff. I think if they built up to this massive, massive chorus, I would have been a lot more okay with it on that first listen. And whereas now it's like, okay, I've listened to the song 3 times, now I can tolerate the chorus.
Right. So talking about the vocals, this is kind of an interesting point. This is kind of sort of and also another turning point where Cedric's vocals, he kind of I think this is definitely like where we can say that Cedric finally kind of shed the last of the At the Drive-In influence and really went into his sort of a unique style. However, that style is a lot of nasal singing, a lot of, like that. And just, I don't mind it as much actually. I think it's fine, especially on the songs where I feel like it works well in sort of creating the weird sort of vibe. We'll go into that in track 8. But yeah, I can see why it would be a little sort of off-putting, especially when you're used to, his more sort of soaring, bellowing vocals on stuff like Francis and Amputecture.
Yeah, I think generally, yeah, I think I prefer Cedric's vocals when he isn't so nasally. I mean, don't get me wrong, he always has that as an element of his singing. And I mean, on the next track here, I actually think there's some pretty great falsetto. And even when we get to track 3, Ilyana, that whole outro is like his highest singing ever, and I think it sounds really cool. But it's just that, like, sometimes it just does not sound very good to me, and I'm like, what happened?
Yeah. So, so what are your thoughts on this song, Max?
All right, two things. Number one, the singing also doesn't bother me. Like, I quite like his vocal style in this in this whole album actually. And number two, are you guys ready for a gross analogy?
Right. A gross analogy. Yeah, no, that sounds great.
All right.
What is it?
How gross.
All
What
right,
kind
so
of
basically,
analogy?
so basically, what this song is. Okay, imagine you have a goth girl, right?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Actually, oh, yes, but continue.
And she's just like, and she's stepping on your dick very hard.
All right.
Okay.
It's just like it's abrasive, it's fast, it's pleasurable, it just hits you
Fast.
right. Yes, fast. It just hits you as soon as it starts. And that's what this song is, and I love it so much. And the chorus is just, yes, please punish me more. It's over and over again. It's almost like masochistic in a way, is
But
what I'm saying.
the difference is that I consented to that goth girl stepping on me.
Well, nigga, you can just turn off the album.
No, not when you gotta review it. Oh my god,
Yeah,
this
no.
has become a Channel Awesome thing. Oh, I have to review the thing.
No, I think that's just like a general, like, kind of like early 2000, not mid 2000s, like review thing. But anyway, moving on. Was that what you wanted to say about this song, Max?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next track, Metatron. According to the notes, Metatron is the name of an angel in Judaism and some branches of Christianity. It is also considered to harbor the voice of God. And I think that's pretty fitting, considering the fact that this song opens up with Cedric kind of breaking in with like this really sort of like this really interesting sort of vocal delivery. Was maybe I'll break down, maybe I'll try. I think that's how it goes, but I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
the
another
first two
one.
lyrics.
Yeah, this is another one where it's quite. This is an 8-minute track, and you can tell that way because it's just it has multiple parts, and you know it's just it has this sort of really nice sort of. The song actually like shifts like tempos a lot. Like the first one is just kind of sort of thumping like boom da boom da boom da boom, and then it switches into sort of more of a quick thing, and then it kind of just keeps switching back between the sort of more thumping one and sort of this more fast tempo, and I quite like it, especially during the parts in the fast sort of section where he kind of does this sort of creepy kind of like like that kind of just like really kind of weird singing, and then like when it gets to sort of the more poppy bits, it kind of feels sort of more during the middle. It you know it feels quite sort of a nice reprieve from all sort of the craziness that the song sort of usually has, and you know it's just kind of it's just I don't know. I really like this song, especially when it gets to the. I have to find the part where it is.
I
it's
actually
the
agree.
Yeah, it's the folding wormholes part. I'm talking about the more popular part. The folding wormholes. My time is written in the alphabet. That part. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what I mean about the nasal singing. The chorus on this song is great. I really love it. I like on a second song like this, I love how it just starts with the hook. And I think it's a great hook in that like it's the kind of chorus where you can just go straight back into it at any point and it doesn't feel unnatural. And I think that's what really holds this song together. Like, I don't remember a ton about the verses, and I just listened back to the song not too long ago. But, like, the instrumental sections are a nice section to finally take a breather. That section you were talking about the folding wormholes is great. I like how the song
Yeah.
stops. Actually, no, it does not stop and go into a weird outro. That's the next song. This one just ends with the chorus. But
Yeah.
either way, I think this song is great in that it's an 8-minute song that does not feel like an 8-minute song. It feels like it's like 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think don't get me wrong, I will have a fair amount of positive things to say about this album. This song is one of them. I think at the best of this album, this is some of the like best pop songwriting the band has ever done.
Yeah. I also forgot to mention sort of the, like I said, the instrumental parts, especially like the part, like the kind of sort of Spanish guitar melody
Yeah.
that kind of comes in before the da na 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 na. That's a really interesting sort of cool melody. That's kind of the song also has a lot of sort of like weird time signature shifts where like there'll be like a weird offbeat where like you'll have like a part where it will like stop a beat too short and it feels really weird, but you know. And that's something I think the Mars Volta have done a lot, so I'll give them props for that. That's a very sort of, it's an old time and tested sort of throw you off songwriting technique, but it always feels effective every time. But yeah, right. Any other last thoughts?
Um, Not really. I think I'll just say I think I I think even though like this is one of those choruses where it's just kind of like one thing that kind of repeats, like it doesn't have like a it's like the same rhythm and melody the whole time. I think
Yeah.
it's just it still doesn't get old. That's really just most of what I have to say about the song is that the chorus is really great and that it really feels like the glue holding together a lot of pretty disparate stuff. Like you were saying, there is a fair amount of like time signature changing and quite a bit of varied instrumentation and vocal stylings.
Right. Okay. So, thoughts on the song, Max?
Okay, this song feels like you're hearing the weeping voice of God while you're having a panic attack, and I love it. It's just
Wow.
like it's just such a like anxious pleadful song that it just perfectly puts you into the mood that it's trying to set. And another thing is the chorus again, like you guys mentioned, is just so good. Like I think most of the choruses on this album are amazing, and this is definitely an example of that.
Yeah. Also, a fun fact: "Weeping the Voice of God While Having a Panic Attack" is the new Dream Theater album title. See it in stores, 2021 or whatever the fuck their new album's gonna come out.
Still gonna come
Okay.
out before the next Tool album.
Oh yeah, no. Right. It's like what 13 years, but
I think
yeah.
so.
All right. So, move on to the next track.
Sure.
All right. So next track, Ilyana. Um, I really like the way this song starts. Like it starts with this kind of sort of like sort of what sounds like kind of just random electronic sort of like sort of weird noises, and then you have sort of Cedric vocals slowly creeping up with this weird filter for like a minute, and then the song bursts in with like this like really funky guitar rhythm and like this sort of just overall funk. This album has a lot of funk on it, and I really like it for that. And you start like these really cool vocals from Cedric where he's like kind of going all high, and then you have this sort of part in like sort of later where Omar's playing this sort of multi sort of layered guitar rhythmic part, and I always find that part really cool. And then the song kind of has more sort of atmospheric parts where like the guitar really kind of really shines with sort of like these really sort of not melodic but kind of sort of spacey bits along with the vocals and the keyboards too. This album has no album. The song is a really kind of sort of great keyboard part, very sort of like very kind of like almost like reverby or like I don't know, like multi-layered. It's weird. I really like it. It's and then like we said, the end part, the song like completely changes key, along with sort of Cedric repeating the line, "Can't spot through the lens, bleeding through your sanctuary, intention accident, bleed through your sanctuary."
Yeah, which is such a cool lyric.
Yeah, yeah. I like I said before, this album has a lot of funk on it, and this is kind of like sort of the I think the start of sort of the real sort of funk coming in through this album. But yeah, I like the song. Also, apparently, I forgot. Oh yeah, I forgot the title.
Yeah, I was
Ilyana
about
is
to talk about that.
it's a reference to this actor Ilyana Vasilievna Mironov, which is the birth name of the actress
Helen Mirren.
Helen Mirren. Yeah,
Who
and then,
she I was like, okay, who is this? It says she won the Academy Award for Best Actress in 2007 for her performance as Queen Elizabeth II in The Queen. So,
Right.
and so there is a quote from I
Cedric.
think it's Cedric, that says, "I've named a song Ilyana after real name of the actress Helen Mirren because she is my favorite actress, and the song is a little lighthearted and different from the subject matter." So, two things. One, that's such a great down-to-earth explanation
yeah,
compared to most things about the Mars Volta. And
Yeah.
like one thing that I think is funny is he says the song is lighthearted, but you were talking about the intro earlier. This song does not start out lighthearted. This song starts out sounding like fucking kind of like the outro to Elvia,
yeah,
which
kind
is
of.
like the weird like multi-layered gross phaser voice.
Yeah.
That's a very scientific term. But then, like you said, it just kind of suddenly gets into these very funky sections. Another nice infectious chorus. And then, well, okay, they call it a refrain, but it's basically a chorus. And then, a nice instrumental section. Another verse, which maybe you didn't need, but I'm okay with. And then that cool outro. So this is another great song, another great blend of stylistic influences, and just some more good pop songwriting from the band.
Yeah, it's
So yeah, I think these two songs here are like probably one of my favorite parts of the album.
yeah. I think definitely Metatron is the great, and Ilyana. Though I think this album definitely does have some songs that I really like later on, and
Oh, yeah.
we'll get into that later.
That's
So,
why I said one of.
Oh yeah, okay. So thoughts, Max?
I really like the both the intro and the outro where it's like this weird electronic thing. It kind of fits. It kind of like perfectly flows from Metatron, and it's just a good lighthearted song that kind of contrasts what we just had, which was really anxious and fast. And this one is like just a lot of fun. And I don't really have much to say about this, other than I had a lot of fun listening to it, and it's probably one of the more lighthearted parts of the album.
Yeah, especially when you consider like, because we talked a little bit about the concept earlier, but apparently like this album's concept is kind of like this sort of loose story about like three individuals in like a Muslim society interacting in different ways or something. Like I might have read that a little bit somewhere, but I don't know. I don't really have much of a grasp on the concept when compared to something like Deloused or Francis, so it's probably not something that's going to be like a big talking point.
Mm.
So yeah, but that's whatever. But yeah. So next track.
Just one last thing about Ilyana, and that's that the first time I listened to this album, it was an endurance test because I think I didn't, I was a bit distracted by how hectic the new drumming was. Even though
Yeah.
like when I listened to the subsequent listens of the album, I actually liked Thomas Pridgen more than I kind of expected to. I think he can go a bit overboard sometimes, but I think he's usually really good, and I think I think it's justified, like Omar's comments that like yeah, I just kind of let him do whatever he wants. But this song, when on these re-listens, I've realized this is a really great change of pace, where after this last song that had a very kind of emotional hook, it just kind of like it starts off with this very kind of creepy feeling and then just kind of suddenly releases all the tension at once. So yeah, even though the first song is a little dodgy, the flow between the first three is pretty great. And so that brings us to Wax Simulacra,
I
the
think
lead
it's
single
Simulacra.
from oh
And then whatever.
oh yeah, I think yeah, true. I know that Simulacrum is pronounced that way. So Wax Simulacra, which was the lead single of the album and also won them a Grammy.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I think is like the really impressive, that the song won them a Grammy. Like, that's like, I think the Mars Volta is like the last band that I would ever think would win a Grammy. Like,
Yeah.
along with Blues Traveler and Arcade Fire.
I could see Arcade Fire winning one.
Oh yeah, no, they actually did win a Grammy for The Suburbs. Yeah.
So the word simulacrum is used to describe a representation of another thing, such as a statue or painting, especially of a god. It also describes an image without the substance or qualities of the original. Simulacra is simply the plural form of the word. So
I don't know. It's interesting because it's kind of it's very simple, but it's kind of weird too because simulacra is not a word you hear very often.
yeah.
So it's kind of this weird juxtaposition where you have like wax and simulacra. Just this idea of I get this idea of like really creepy like mannequins that like vaguely look human but like don't at the same time.
It's like it's like a mannequin that's kind of in the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
But now with this song, this is the only time. Actually, it's not the only time you'll hear me say this sentence because I'm going to say it later on in this review. This is one of the few Mars Volta songs that I think is too short.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of interesting things going on in this song, and I think it's cool that they wanted to make a prog song that was only 2.5 minutes long. But I also think that as a result, it speeds by a little bit too quickly, especially because up to this point, the songs have all been either 5 minutes or 8 minutes. And
Yeah.
that's still going to be the trend for most of the album from this point on. So this song just kind of comes in and goes out. And you're like, whoa, come back here, song. You're interesting. I want to spend more time with you.
Yeah, I don't know. What I like about the song especially is the intro, like because you have sort of this juxtaposition between like I say I've said that word twice, but yeah, you have this sort of back and forth between like the insanely fast like frenetic drumming and the guitar and sort of everything else. They're pretty simple, and the song also has a lot of sort of more nasal singing from Stage, but I think it works here because of the fact that it kind of is sort of fighting against sort of the guitar and everything else, where it's kind of very sort of high and all over the place. Where on here, it's just kind of got this sort of interesting sort of rhythm to him, and it kind of, I think it. Well, again, you did say that the song was a little too short. I feel like also they were trying to go for something a bit more sort of not spacious, but sort of a bit more sort of closed and kind of sort of in the moment.
Yeah.
Which is probably the reason why it because I feel like if the song was a longer, it kind of would feel a little much like it overstayed its welcome because of the fact that I feel like it's kind of speed and sort of this in the moment feeling it got is what makes it unique. Like it kind of just has this sort of feeling of right now powerful and then it ends, and I think that works for this song. I think.
Yeah, I do think it's a good song on its own, but I think uh, in the context of both the album and their discography in general, I think that kind of becomes both something that makes it unique and something that makes it a little weirdly forgettable at the same time.
Maybe I don't find this song pretty forgettable. I think it's pretty cool actually.
Well, no,
But yeah,
I mean it has memorable parts, but it's just like I kind of struggle to remember like most of the verses on this song, um,
alright.
as well as like kind of the section between the little bridge there. Like it's not it's just like I think yeah, the in the moment quality is good, but it also is like I'm restating what I said. Max, save this conversation.
I love the drumming a lot.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the drumming just kind of really makes the song for me. It's really fast. It's it switches a lot of the time.
Right.
It's the really intense backbone the song I think needs. And I actually like the how short it is because it doesn't overstay its welcome. And yeah, it could be longer, but I think it's just good the way it is, and what I think it's does what it goes for perfectly.
Right. Yeah. It's. I think, and honestly, I have to say it's. I guess it's kind of not surprising that this would be the one Mars Volta song that would win them a Grammy, because like when I think of all the other singles that they've done, like The Widow and Elvia and the stuff on D-Louse that was recent singles, this is definitely the most straightforward song they've probably ever done, at least up until this point. I think there's some songs on later albums that are more straightforward, but it's catchy, it's quick, it's sort of it gets you like right in the center, and just like it leaves before it overstays its welcome, like we just said before. But yeah, great short song.
I don't know if I'd say it's the most straightforward song that they've done at this point. Like, I don't know. It in a way, I think that I think Televators and The Widow are both probably more straightforward than this song, and also
Eh,
Vermicide.
right. That's a good point, actually.
But those songs but I think those songs are very much demonstrations of why that isn't a bad thing, because those are songs that like just are connect with me instantly, and that I will always remember. Not always, maybe, but like get really stuck in there.
Yeah.
Um,
So, is that all our thoughts for this song?
yeah.
All right. So next track, Goliath.
I'm
Goliath
gonna
is
be
a
real with you. Chorus to
yeah.
this song is Vermicide, but not as interesting.
Nigga, what the fuck are you on?
All right, hold on. Wait, let me just. Okay, hold on. Let me read the. Okay, Goliath is a Philistine warrior mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. He is famous for his battle in the 11th century BC that he lost against David, the young Israelite boy who had already been chosen by God and anointed by Samuel to become king of Israel. There, I said. It. All right.
Record scratch. You're
Yeah.
probably wondering how I got to this point. Okay, that was what
Alright.
when I first listened to this song. That was literally all I thought, because I was being a stuck-up asshole. But the song actually is pretty good. Mostly, I think, similar to how Metatron has a chorus that really holds everything together, I think the chorus on this song is pretty good. But for me, the big highlight of this is the "Never heard a man speak like this before"
Yeah.
refrain,
Like,
which are lyrics from a gospel hymn of the same name that was regularly sung about at Jonestown about the cult leader Jim Jones,
right.
the Kool-Aid guy.
Yeah. Also, oddly, this is not the only reference to Jim Jones, because one of the bonus tracks of this album is called Mr. Muggs, which was apparently the name that Jim Jones gave his pet monkey, or something like that. So yeah, no, that's kind of a weird thing. But yeah, so this song is interesting because it's kind of like the first part of it is it's like a funk song again, sort of like the with the sort of the wah car, the da 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 da.
Yeah,
Da, 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 da.
I will
And then the
say
second
it's a
half,
good riff, but I think they might overuse it just a little bit.
maybe, but and then the second part of the song is like a jazz thing where the time signature changes from 4/4 to I think it's like 3/4 to 6/8, and it changes sort of and yeah, no, this album gets like really power. I keep saying album. This song kind of goes from again for like this very kind of sort of thumping kind of funk song to this really fast and chaotic like free jazz song with like this crazy guitar riffing and just like crazy ass drums and Cedric screaming in the background. Like the song goes insane at the very end.
Yeah, the solos are pretty great in this.
Yeah, I love how this song also just like suddenly stops. Again, with that kind of sort of suddenly stopping sort of thing that they would do.
Yeah, yeah, this actually is a pretty great song. This is a pretty great single. And part of the reason it's a great single, it's kind of the opposite of a single like The Widow or Televators that work really well as singles because they just kind of happen to already be quite straightforward songs.
Yeah.
This is a great single in that it starts out pretty straightforward, but then it just kind of suddenly goes in a very different direction.
Yeah.
And like I've seen a lot of people say that this is a great like intro song to the Mars Volta, and I could see why, because I think it is like has a pretty infectious hook, has a pretty funky groove, but also ridiculous guitar solos and weird creepy sections and lyrics about Jim Jones and shit.
Yeah, also this song's lyrics are also kind of I'm probably not the only person who thinks this, but the lyrics kind of like I'm gonna be straightforward, they just describe date rape. Or at least the first part describes date rape with lines like, "That night I remember what you slipped in my glass when we came rewinding when I
Yeah.
foamed at the mouth while the lights winked at me and now my shape is kept." Like, I don't know. There's also other parts in the sort of the song where it's pretty clear there's some not great stuff going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, which is weird especially when it's sort of compared to the very kind of sort of upbeat attitude the song mostly has.
As well as the music video.
Oh, oh yeah. Also, I completely forgot this. This is one of like the very few Mars Volta albums that has like a lot of music videos.
Yeah.
Like I think like 5 songs on this album have music videos that the band made themselves, and this one actually has like probably the funniest because it's just like all the members of the band like at nighttime in like this road playing on these like crappy instruments, like flailing around while Cedric like walks around with like this weird like giant cloak on his face. So it just looks like a bunch of like guys like who are like drunk just in the middle of the night, and for like in like the middle of the song, like a car comes up and the sun just completely stops, and they like wait for the car to back up and then go back to it.
Yeah.
just random, but it's great.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Coheed and Cambria song "Devil in Jersey City" has a weird alternate video where they are in a barn and performing the song on like banjos and shit, and I have no idea how it connects to the song, but it's just kind of a nice funny video.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's one kind of weird thing is that like most of the music videos of the album are like funny.
Yeah, because I think for the Ilyana one, it's like Omar trying to teach a class of band members, but they keep like throwing crap at him, so he like can't do anything.
Yeah.
And then the Abrinkula one was like Cedric and Omar as like surgeons, like working on someone's body and like pulling out weird crap.
Yeah. Which is a bit interesting because, like, that's not really the tone of the music or really the Mars Volta at this point. Like, if you look at pretty much all their albums before this, it's interesting because, like, before when they'd do music videos, they'd almost always, like, for the most part, they were usually pretty minimal.
Yeah,
Like,
because like
Inertiatic ESP and Elvia both just had like concert footage. Elvia had some weird shit going on in the chorus, but mostly concert footage.
Yeah.
And then the Widow and Televators had music videos that had a little bit more of like an actual concept. But
Yeah.
like for the most part it almost seemed like they very much kind of didn't want to use music videos like for marketing. Like I talked a little bit in the Amputecture episode about how I feel like they kind of deliberately hid that album a bit with like not releasing Vermicide as an album and
call it their autistic child
and releasing Viscerize as a single with like a fucking weird bridge where Cedric is just whispering creepily over the actual song. This album feels very much like the opposite. This one feels like they were like, hey guys, we're here. We have a new album for you to enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it is interesting how the attitude of like the marketing of this album that again is kind of going for this like indictment of organized religion is so like chipper.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking like yeah, like even on this album, like the music video for Wax Simulacra is basically just the same of like sort of the compilation of live footage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so have we heard? Oh, I was gonna say. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to say. So the parts in the middle of there's like the last part during the chorus, not the chorus, but the verse before it goes into the chorus, where it's the sort of the interlocking guitars and like the da like that part. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I really like that part, like especially the second time when it does it, because like they interlock a lot better than the first time, and it's such a great sort of like little sort of songwriting sort of quirk, but it's just always a pleasure to listen to. Omar's really good at like those little song quirks, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, those
That was my last
parts in prog songs where you just have like the two guitars playing in unison. That's a very good trope.
Yeah, okay. So thoughts on the song, Max?
I think this is my favorite song on the album. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, the chorus is just like,
It's not a bad pick.
yeah, like the chorus is just so good. Like, sure, what you said about it just being in like another one, but not as interesting. I definitely do not agree with that. I think this is just like, this is very distinctive, and again, like even the other parts, it's just like nonstop good songwriting, nonstop sonic pleasure throughout this whole thing, and it just gets you pumped up. It gets you like it puts you into this like weird like this weird vibrant mood, and it's just such a great song.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I said that because it was a legitimate thought I had at one point, but now I'm just trying to turn it into a meme.
Okay.
Because it is a little similar to Vermicide, where it does the instruments dropping out thing, but
Yeah.
that's also
Yeah.
just a musical trope. Yeah. No, this is a good song. I'm dumb, and this episode is bad. Anyway, speaking of bad things, how about we move on to Tourniquet Man?
Oh, you mean really good things?
Okay.
Alright, I'm gonna
Alright,
cut
let
a
me-
promo on Tourniquet Man. Because,
Well,
like,
Ray's cutting promo.
because, like, alright. here's the songwriting process. You know, Omar, he writes a song, he makes a good song, and then he realized, oh shit, I accidentally, instead of grabbing new sheet music, just grabbed some of the sheet music from Asilos Magdalena and The Widow from the last two albums. Shit, how do I disguise the fact that I accidentally wrote the same song again? I know, chop off the first 3.5 minutes, aka get rid of the mood, and just make it the weird electronic section at the end. Like, that's what this song feels like to me, is it feels like it's supposed to be another song, kind of like Asilos Magdalena, or The Widow, or Televators to an extent, that starts out as like a calming acoustic song, but then goes into a weird electronic freak out at the end. And it's like, I almost would have rather they just played the trope straight than do this kind of lame subversion where it just is not good from the beginning.
Okay, so I should probably so yeah, this one doesn't have an explanation of the name, because the fact that it's pretty straightforward. Tourniquet is just like a thing that is like a torture device thing. Yeah. But yeah, this song, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like the weird sort of like in between song on this album, and I kind of like it. Like I like the vocals, the "Let Me Be Your Tourniquet Man." I really like his delivery on that. You know, "Let me be your tourniquet man."
Actually,
Like,
I will agree on that. I will agree that I like that first line in the chorus, even though it does sound a little bit too 80s ballad for its own good.
But yeah, it's kind of like a weird in-betweeny song, and I can understand why you wouldn't like it. But yeah, would you say this is your least favorite song on the album?
Yes. I mean, some people will... The philosophers of our time have often asked the question, is it worse to be bad or unmemorable? And I'm gonna be real with you, I can't remember much of the next 3 tracks on this, but I dislike Tourniquet Man more because I feel like it didn't... I'm not sure. I don't feel like it was successful in what it was going for. And I'm not just saying that because of like, oh, it's like this pre-established trope of the Mars Volta's songwriting. I also just mean that in like, I don't really find it effectively creepy. I don't really find it to be effectively big or epic. I just kind of feel like it's a big bundle of electronic noise that just kind of spirals into nothingness.
Alright. Okay, so what are your thoughts on the song, Ray? Or no, Max.
I think this is basically a compressed Widow. But like, I think it's distinctive enough for it to be its own song. And I do legitimately like whenever the Mars Volta does anything legitimately weird or off-putting. So
Right.
I guess for
this is
me it's just I like when they do weird and off-putting things more when it feels like they have a context behind them. That's this song, it's kind of like what I was talking about before with Aberrincula, where I feel like that song would have been better if it built up a little bit. This is a similar thing where it's like I feel like it's kind of missing the kind of mood setting that the Mars Volta is usually really good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like at the same time though, me personally, I like things that are just weird without a context, just weird for the sake of being weird, and that's what this song is. And it does interesting things with sound in general that impresses me a lot. So
that is a valid opinion.
Okay,
I think, like I said, if I were to rate this in terms of just all music, it's like above average. But for the Mars Volta, I expect more.
Alright, that's fair. But yeah, so is next song?
Yes, and
Alright,
no
so-
more promos.
Okay, yeah, so
Not
next
for me,
song
anyway.
Next song is Cavaletas, and apparently, according to the notes, Una Cavalletta is said to be a woman who constantly tries to change her lover into some fantasy she has conjured. I've never heard of that before. That must be like a Spanish thing. Yeah. If I had to say overall, this is probably my personal least favorite track. Not necessarily because I think it's like horribly bad, but because of the fact that I think out of all sort of like the longer songs on this album, this one kind of feels like it went on for too long.
I agree.
And
When I was
when
I was
first part
listening to the album yesterday, I remember looking at my phone at Spotify at the 4.5 minute mark and being like, "There's still 5 minutes left of this."
Yeah, like the first part of the song I really like the opening, like with the really fast drums and the that, and it goes into like this really weird lyrics about salting rings of night fatigues and primordial semantics giving birth into reverse. And
I did
like
not
that.
notice these lyrics. They're pretty great. I think
Yeah.
that's honestly one of my bigger problems with the vocals is just that it's like the least intelligible they've ever been. I think that might be why the nasal singing bothers me more. Is just because when I listened to this, I couldn't make out a lot of the lyrics.
Right.
And I didn't really care to know, even
Yeah.
though they are still as weird and interesting as ever.
But yeah, so then the song kind of just goes into this weird thing where all the instruments keep fading out, along with like these sort of like weird electronic bits, and then like Cedric just keeps coming back with all the instruments, but his voice keeps getting more and more distorted and like effects heavy, and then like you get into like the chorus, and it's pretty cool. Like I really like how to sort of the weird like guitar melody, the da na 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 na, like that part's pretty cool. The problem was just like there's just so many parts that are just like, Cedric just screaming with these weird like echo effects, along with just like this really kind of generally kind of boring instrumentation where it's just kind of like this choppy guitar riff. And then at the end, it's just kind of this more slower bit of the chorus. And overall, this song just kind of feels like they had like a bunch of really good ideas but couldn't figure out how to fit them together well. So they just kind of like, let's just do weird shit for the sake of it. Which again, like that's not a bad thing, but like it could have worked a lot better if the transitions were shorter and a bit more concise, I would say.
Yeah, and that's one kind of weird thing about this album. I didn't mention it on Aberrincula because I was busy being a stupid idiot. But there's one problem I kind of have with the outro of that song, and it's that in that song too, there's like a kind of choppy guitar riff that they just kind of keep repeating for one section. And it's kind of weird because I can't really think of the Mars Volta ever really doing that. I feel like most of the time when they're going into like full-on instrumental sections, they're usually keeping them as varied as possible.
Yeah.
Like I think probably like the only time I can think of that's like an exception to that on their first few albums is like Day of the Baphomets. There's the one section where they keep changing the time signature from like 11/16 to 13/16 and the do 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 do. But I was okay with them bringing that back because that was a cooler riff.
Yeah, but I think definitely this song is probably just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of felt like they kind of just didn't really know what they were doing with this song, because the fact that a lot of it just kind of feels, it's probably like,
it's a little fillery.
Yeah, from a guitar standpoint, it's probably like the weakest Omar's ever really played, because like there's some cool riffs, but there's not a lot of like interesting solo stuff or like sort of more out there kind of riffy stuff. It's just kind of mostly just kind of straightforward, kind of just like stuff. But yeah, is that all your thoughts on this, Ray?
Yeah. Like I said, I forgot a decent amount about the song.
All right, so Max.
This is my least favorite song as well. This is like a song I straight up do not like.
Hell yeah, we all agree on something.
Like,
well, actually, we all agreed on Metatron and Ilyana, and also mostly Goliath.
Yeah.
But like rhythmically, it's just way too repetitive. It does not need to be 9 minutes. It doesn't do enough to really impress me. There's no like big chorus that really grabs my attention or is really infectious. It's just a bland prog song, and there is enough bland prog in the world. Dream Theater. um, that I do not need more bland prog.
Yes. All right, but yeah, okay, but it's yeah. So I think that's kind of what agree. Kind of least favorite song on the album. Probably like I don't know. Maybe Omar was just like too busy sniffing his own afro to actually care for Tyson. Okay, is that all the thoughts on the song?
I mean, I wouldn't
All right.
blame Omar if he was busy. I mean, his studio was flooded during the recording of this.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, maybe he was working on this song, and then he was like, oh, fuck, I gotta get a bucket and start pouring out the water in my studio.
No, he just like soaks up all of the water with his afro and just
He just knocks it up and
outside.
then wrings it out.
Yeah.
Leans over the window.
He's like, what the fuck? Yeah, okay. Alright. Next song, Agadez. Alright. Apparently, according to this, Agadez is the largest city in northern Niger. I think definitely that's kind of the oddest origin for like a song name. Like, that's not what I would think for like, you know, a song title.
That is
But,
kind of
yeah.
weird for the Mars Volta. I don't think they've named any other songs after locations. I
Yeah.
guess Asilos Magdalena is kind of named after a location because a Magdalena was a type of asylum.
Yeah,
But-
but this is more like a specific
A specific
place.
location, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so this song, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like Aubrey and Kula, where it has like two specific parts. There's the first part, which is this kind of sort of mid-tempo sort of song with this very kind of interesting sort of keyboard sort of keyboard drone in the background, along with sort of Cedric doing probably his most nasal vocaling on this album with this very sort of rhythmic, you know, where's the lyric? Was it like what's it? I'm trying to find the part. Oh yeah, the I got distance, don't let it close, like that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And I think it's pretty funny actually. Like this kind of seems like a song they're trying to sort of be more kind of like straightforward, entertaining, and weird. And I really like it for it. And then like the first part, especially with sort of the chorus, where it's very kind of like very sort of straightforward, but it's great. Where it's just like, you know, it's unforgivable. It knows that I am visible. Like I really like that part. And then sort of the post chorus part was sort of like the interlocking guitar riff is pretty cool too. Is that, you know, that part. But then I think the second half of the song is kind of not that interesting. Like I think the first half is really good, but then the second half is just kind of more kind of generic fast stuff that kind of doesn't stand out in my opinion. I don't know how you guys feel though.
I think this song is a little bit forgettable. I was looking over this song on Genius. I think I remembered why. And that's that I don't know if they necessarily needed that third verse. Like they probably could have gone right to the outro, or maybe not right to the outro, but just like this song, it kind of felt a little bit like Aberrancula to me, in that song kind of went to the chorus one too many times. I feel like this song also probably could have been a little bit shorter. But yeah, I agree. This one's a little bit more forgettable. But overall it's not bad.
I wanted to add also, this is like probably the only time on this album, other than the string section later, that has like a guest vocal. It has like a guest member, and it's apparently some guy named Henry Trejo, who does sort of the low pitch becauses on the song, where he goes, you know, because.
Oh, fuck right! I forgot about that. That was a great moment.
Yeah. It's funny
Never
'cause
mind.
it's
The song's a 10 out of 10 now.
Right, yeah. I think it's a really sort of interesting sort of addition because they've never really done that kind of sort of more sort of deep bass vocal style, really.
Yeah, it
Other
kind
than
of
like
sounds like the backing vocals on like an old funk track.
yeah,
Because
yeah. But what are your thoughts on the song, Max?
One word I would use to describe this song is it's very smooth.
yeah,
Like,
that's kind of what I was trying to go for. It's slow, but it's very kind of got that good groove to it.
it has a good groove. It flows well. It's just a very smooth, fluid time. Yes, it's a little bit forgettable, but that just leaves you for a unique experience each time you listen to it. And just because it's forgettable doesn't mean it's necessarily bad.
Yeah, it's a good point. Definitely did wish they kind of expanded the song a little bit. Maybe made the maybe not maybe expanded, but like maybe fleshed out the first part a little bit and chopped down the second part. But that's just how I feel. But yeah. So next track.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Next track. Asclepios. Asclepios is named after the Greek medicine god Asclepius, which I guess the funny misspelling is funny, I guess, but yeah. So this song has probably like one of my. This is I. If there's one thing I describe the first part of the song is, it's epic, like it comes in with Cedric singing this huge kind of just roaring line, along with like these incredibly fast drums. Like guitar is just like is all over the place in the song, along with just like these weird like off kilter guitar chords, and then you have like the last part of the verse where it's just like the guitar and the saxophone like sort of syncing up and performing this sort of epic sort of almost battle cry sounding thing, and then the song like suddenly stops and they change its key with these weird droning guitars and Cedric singing like this really kind of like high pitched weird line, and then it goes back and then just like switches that a couple times. Second time it does the weird section, it's even weirder. And then it goes into this more kind of straightforward funky thing, which I also really like. Like this is a theme of this album, like having like a first part and a second part that are very different from each other. And I find it pretty interesting. It's not something they've really kind of done where obviously they have songs that change parts, but there's never like a sort of, a first half and then like a second half,
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I do think that really thunderous intro is a great way to start off the song, especially after a couple more, like, I don't know, I don't think tepid is a very harsh word to use. Just, like, a couple songs that aren't quite as bombastic,
Yeah.
It's nice to kind of bring in that good old Mars Volta bombast.
Yeah.
I will say though that in spite of that, this is another one where, like, there's a decent amount of it that I forgot. Don't worry, that I will have things to say about the next 3 songs, and about the next 2 albums. There will be substantial things that will happen soon, listener. Don't click away. Hey, what do you think about life, Max?
Well, life is kind of shit, but this song.
Agreed.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, this song, I don't have much to say about it actually, but it's kind of very drone-like.
Yeah.
Like and I really like things that are kind of droning and kind of take something and then extend it longer and is not very rhythmic. But this kind of switches between more rhythmic and more rhythmic parts very effectively, I feel. I think this is because like I do agree that the later half of this album is pretty unmemorable, but on the other hand, it's still a good experience, but unfortunately it keeps me from giving it like a positive score.
Yeah. I think definitely if there's one thing I really find cool about the song, it's during the second verse where like they like isolate all like all certain instruments in like one channel, and then
Oh
like
yeah.
once it and like it like once like the second part comes in, it like rolls into the other part and just like with this huge drum roll. Like that's really cool, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I think, one of the coolest uses of like sort of
That
a
is a
stereo
cool
sound that I've
part,
ever seen
yeah.
or ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, so
that is some innovative mixing. I think for the most part, honestly, the mix of this album kind of bugs me. I think it's a little bit too loud and has a little bit too much going on. But I think every once in a while they manage to work in some really cool stuff, especially on Soothsayer, which we aren't to yet, but we will be to soon, and that's probably my favorite song on here.
all right, okay, so I think we can move on to the next song.
Yeah.
All right, next song, Ouroboros. An Ouroboros is an ancient symbol depicting a serpent or dragon swallowing its own tail and forming a circle. Pretty straightforward.
You mean
I think.
like this podcast?
What? I don't. Okay, fine, but yeah. So, all right. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So this song. So this is. I really like the way the song opens. It's just very kind of like, really for. I think this is probably one of the parts where like the multiple percussion like really shine, because of the fact that you have both the drums and the congas also playing sort of together. And the song also has sort of this very kind of referring back to Metatron, this very kind of like sort of Latin sounding sort of chord progression. You know, the da na 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 na.
Yeah.
And also,
this
it's
song
very
is,
interesting.
is a
I really
great
like it.
use of a lot of those Latin elements that the Mars Volta love to work in, which is kind of funny as it has a Greek name.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think I think this is a pretty good one, and I think it goes off in a lot of interesting directions. This is a song where I like the fact that it's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and then after that, it just kind of goes off into some random directions.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of goes back to that. It kind of goes back to the refrain in between the second and third chorus. But, like, other than that, this song is nice and pretty unpredictable. I think this song and Conjugal Burns, the last track, which are the same length, I think they both use their runtimes quite well.
All right. So I have to say, probably one of my favorite lyrics on this album is the chorus of the song. You know, it's pretty simple. It's "Don't you ever, ever, ever trust my mercy," which is like these sort of really cool sort of refrains of Sedgwick really doing the high notes every other ever.
Yeah,
and
it's
just
a nice biting refrain.
Yeah, it's really kind of it's cool. I really like it. And like I have to say, like the multiple times, or the multiple parts of the song are quite interesting, especially the parts where it kind of goes in sort of a more sort of rhythmic kind of, again with the funk element of like yeah. I have to say the one small thing I don't like of the song is the part where the vocals kind of do this weird thing where they like split off into the two channels and one is like really kind of like distorted and the other is like even more so. You know what I'm talking about? That part?
Yeah, that is kind of weird and not
I like it,
good
though.
part.
I don't know. It always kind of gets me every time I listen to it, but yeah, I really like, especially the multiple parts on this song are cool and they are very unique, especially with the different flavors they go for. And on the last part where it's just kind of this very kind of sort of loose sounding thing with like the Omar's weird warbly guitar tone. Like it really kind of gives this feeling of just like, you know, stumbling out of an explosion or something. Like, you know, you've walked out of like the nightclub all drunk after like you're rocking out and like dancing, and now you're like stumbly like tripping around and stuff. Or maybe that's just me, I don't know.
Maybe. What about you,
Alright.
Max?
This is another example of a really infectious chorus.
Yeah.
I really like when the parts kind of slow down into specifically this one part where it kind of sounds like it's like the keyboards are kind of droning on, and they're doing the chorus very slowly, and that part really I think ties the song together into this kind of epic conclusion before not really conclusion but like kind of refrain. I don't really know.
Uh,
Eh.
but yeah, it's a I really this and it's another one of sort of the power like the more powerful songs on this album. That's more
Yeah,
straightforward.
it's really
More
powerful, and I think it does a really good job at being like this really hard hitting song without like being particularly like complex or hard hitting.
right. Yeah. I have to say also the solos in the song are really weird because it kind of sounds like he's like tapping his pick against the neck. I don't know. It sounds weird to me, but I like it that way. It's just kind of
Yeah.
sounds like he just kind of went up like shh like that. I don't know. But yeah. Next song.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm gonna be a little honest here. I find it really weird that the next track on the album, "Soothsayer," which by the way is just it's a word for someone who predicts future events. I find it weird that this isn't the closing track.
I
Like,
agree.
it's weird because like the closing track on this album, like we said, the song "Conjugal Burns," but we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, this song is it's pretty interesting. It's it's basically just like one part over and over again, or at least what do you call it or at least the strings are. It's just kind of this one part over and over again. But it's interesting in the way because everything else changes around it. Like all the other instruments kind of change and do different parts, while the sort of the orchestra continues this sort of very simple melody, and it gives us this kind of sort of interesting vibe. Like you're like walking through different stages of like some like weird dimension, but like the underlying like tone never changes. It's a very interesting sort of song sort of writing thing, and I quite like it. It's a very doomy song.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing that I would be surprised if like a doom metal band sort of covered one day. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
you
yeah,
could also say it's like a little bit hip hop esque in a way in how it's based around a sample, basically. Though in this case, it's not a sample but field recordings, which is how you know that it's a good song because they brought back the field recordings from Francis the Mute.
Yeah.
But like I think this song really it's just carried by the lo-fi recording of those strings makes them sound very nice and otherworldly. Like
yeah.
this song, it is kind of repetitive. Like it does it has two verses, but it has three repetitions of and it like it just is like a verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, and then pre-chorus and chorus twice. At least that's how the lyrics are listed here. But like even though the song is 9 minutes and not structurally like all over the place, it never gets boring because it just puts you into this really kind of it has this very kind of dreamy and ethereal mood to it. And it's like yeah, this is I do think this would have been a pretty great ending to the album just because after so much like really insane, hectic and eclectic music, it would have been nice to have a very kind of soothing closer here.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
But
why they
nope.
called it Soothsayer. Because it's soothing.
That's pretty
Hey,
good.
I'll be here all week. Actually,
All
I
right.
won't.
So, what are your thoughts on the song, Max?
I don't know. I actually don't have much to say about this because it's not. It doesn't really stand out to me that much, surprisingly.
That's
But
interesting, because when you talked about this album kind of, like, expanding their sound a bit and doing a lot of sonically unique things, this song is what immediately came to mind, because I was like, because this is because I was like, yeah, I don't know if they'd ever done anything quite like this on their first 3 albums.
Yeah, that is true. Like this is a very like unique song. It's just there's not much here that I have to talk about other than like I really do like it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I agreed. It is, it's oddly straightforward structurally. Like you kind of don't realize it until you
Yeah.
go and look at the lyrics.
Yeah, it's pretty. I definitely do like again like the doomy vibes that the song has.
Yeah.
Like it definitely does feel very kind of just sad,
So I
like
think
someone just wandering through like a dark desert or something. But yeah,
so I think in that case we can move on to the final track,
yeah. Here you
Conjugal
go.
Burns, and the title here. The word conjugal means anything that relates to marriage or the relationship between a married couple. So
And I'm gonna
pretty straightforward meaning there.
I'm gonna add this. I actually added that little bit there. They actually didn't have a section for conjugal burns, and I'm just like, who's gonna know what the word conjugal means? So I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna edit that in, and I did.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm just like, because I certainly had never heard of the word conjugal before, and I'm sure neither of you had before either.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But this song, like, I know that I said that Soothsayer would probably be a better closing track, but I don't know. This song also just has. The song is powerful, especially like the second part of it, because all right, because the first part is pretty slow and it's very similar sounding to Soothsayer, where it's just kind of this vaguely kind of Middle Eastern sounding riff for a little bit with sort of a sort of word bits up, and then like the second part comes in and like the tempo like doubles, and then you have that fucking chorus. It's probably one of my favorite choruses ever. I'm gonna find it. All of this time, bets or containment. Where am I now that the music has faded?
Yeah, I love that lyric.
Yeah.
That's one of those great lyrics where the Mars Volta, where Cedric decides to keep a lyric pretty simple and it works perfectly as a result. And yeah, I agree. This song, I think I don't know. I'm a little bit divided if I like it or don't like it as a closing track. On its own, I think it's pretty great. Like I said, I think like Ouroboros, it goes in some pretty interesting directions, and
Especially at the end.
yeah, and I think like, I mean the last 2 sections of the song are labeled refrain and refrain 2. Of course, it's a very infectious song, or at least that part of it especially. I think with me, as much as I like the ending though, I think it's a little bit too sudden. Now, we talked about this on now this is like a thing on Mars Volta albums that all of them up to this point have had very sudden endings, and I think this is the first one that I find kind of questionable. Because, like,
Yeah.
with Deloused, it just kind of suddenly transitions to this outro section that just kind of ends. And then, like, Francis the Mute, the chorus just, like, gets interrupted mid-sentence. It's great.
Yeah.
And then Amputexture has this big, slow, brooding track at the end, but then just kind of suddenly stops in a way that loops very nicely with the opener. This one, though, it doesn't feel as purposeful. It feels like they were just kind of like, you know, Omar had to mop up the studio again.
Actually, that's really like a really funny image. Just all the members performing and just like I don't know, like knee deep water, and then just like they finish like, oh, okay, guys, pack up. We gotta fucking clean all the water out. It's like fucking that one scene from Fantasia, except it's just like all the band members performing and like water instead of the broomsticks.
Pretty much.
All right, but also I have to say on the second time the chorus, the second and third time the chorus, the follow up line, the You better steal this chance to give birth to more. You'll wear those healing dams down to the plug. Like his vocal delivery on that part is just,
That's nice.
it's such a great part, and I love it.
Yeah.
Like you wear those healing dams. I fucking voice cracked on that, but yeah, it's just like the vocals on the song are great because it never gets like too nasally. I think
I
it
agree.
never goes in. Yeah.
See, the way that you were talking about that, I thought you were going to talk about the extremely infamous lyric from verse 2. I got a pain inside that'll rip through the very fabric of time. Because
Is that an infamous lyric?
that's a very infamous meme, because it does not sound like he says pain inside in the song.
Yeah.
It,
What does it sound like?
most people say it sounds like he said he had a penis that'll rip through the very fabric of time.
I've never heard that before.
Okay.
Holy crap.
There was so I first heard about this because I was on the Mars Volta subreddit one day. A dangerous
do.
habit, I know. And I was looking, they had a post that was like the Mars Volta's least weird lyric, and I was like, oh, this is and they said, oh, this is a follow-up to the most weird lyric one. So I went to that, and most people are just posting like the kiosk in my temporal lobe is shaped like Rosalind Carter in like those aesthetic like space between every letter lines. And then a bunch of people just were posting in all caps, I got a penis that'll rip through the very fabric of time. And I was like, is this an actual lyric? And so I went to Genius, and I was like, where's Conjugal Burns? That's the song, right? And then I looked through the lyrics, and I was like, oh, pain inside.
Okay,
And when I listened to the song, I was listening for it, and I was like, yeah, I could see why people would hear it as that.
All right. Okay. Once the Mars Volta inevitably reforms, someone needs to like add that on Twitter to Cedric and just tell him to sing that next time they play the song, and just like.
Someone should just ask him if it's true.
All right, but yeah, I think if there's one last thing I have to say about the song, and it's the one part of the song that I really don't like, it's the part of like before the last chorus, where they just do like the big freak out at the end. I don't know. I never liked that part because it's just too noisy, and it goes on for like a minute and a half.
I love that part.
I just can. I mean, of course you would, but I just can never get into that
part. Of course you would. Like, you didn't say it like that, but it was great.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, it's not that long, but even that, either way, it just kind of. I mean, it's understandable why they would have it, but still, I don't know. But yeah, I feel like
I think that is an interesting section, but I think it might kind of contribute to what I was saying about the ending being a little too sudden.
Yeah, maybe, but yeah. So me and Ray be going up. But what are your thoughts on this song overall, Max?
I do think the chorus is really good. I think this is excellent closing to the album. That freak out and towards the end is probably one of my favorite parts on the album in general, because it takes like all like the weird ambient parts of the Mars Volta and just says, let's take it a step further. Let's add some dogs barking. Let's add like some
I do like the
weird
dog
shit. Let's just take this a step further. And yeah, it's such a such a fucking infective part. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Hey, I said it was good.
Okay. I don't know, maybe whatever. Okay. But yeah, so I really like this song. I'm still on the fence about whether or not it would have been a better closer than Soothsayer or not, but yeah, the song is still like pretty great. So yeah, that has been the Bedlam in Goliath. I think overall, like this album is definitely. I don't think it's as great as their other stuff, but I don't think it's in any way bad. Like we said, I do think some songs could have been shorter. Some could have even been a little longer. Wax Simulacra, but overall, I feel like this song probably would have benefited from a bit of scraping down of some of the songs.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, the thing about um the Mars Volta is that their lowest rated album, like in most places, they're like the one that people tend to mock the most is Octahedron. But
yeah,
I'm gonna be real with you. I think I'm probably gonna like Octahedron more than I liked this album.
ooh, that's gonna.
Yeah. Here's why. Because I was just running some numbers, and I was like, all right, didn't like Tourniquet Man. Tracks 7 through 9 weren't bad, but they weren't that interesting either. Um, you could like remove those 4 tracks, and you'd still have 50 minutes. I think that's kind of the thing about this album is that like I said, even though this is the first album where they didn't have songs over 10 minutes, this is like the first album of theirs that I feel is too long and has songs that I feel like could be cut. I think it just like as as a collection of songs, it's not bad, but as an album, I feel like it's missing structure and atmosphere. And I also just feel like on Amputexture, the band kind of started losing some of the purpose that they had on their first 2 albums. Like, they were sometimes just being abrasive for the sake of it, when before, like, in Francis the Mute, anytime, like everything in that album is purposeful and, like, placed in a very specific way, and that's why it's my favorite of their albums, is because of how amazingly composed it is. Whereas, like, and on Amputexture, I feel like they started to lose a little bit of that, like, direction, and I feel like on this album they lost even more. It just kind of feels like they're just kind of going from song to song, and it feels like they did put a lot of thought into each song. They put a lot of thought into all the drum fills, and they put a lot of thought into all the weird guitar solos and the kind of annoying but still kind of unique and interesting vocal effects, and and all kinds of stuff. But it just, to me, it feels like their most bloated and least interesting of their albums that I've listened to so far.
All right,
But that's pretty controversial. Most people like Amputexture less than this album. I'm just weird.
Well, I'm weird too, because it's my favorite album.
True.
Yeah. All right. So Max.
Again, this is like, I would say this is a lot better than Ambutexture. This has some of, again, I love it because it has some of the Mars Volta's best hooks.
Yeah,
And
that's like the
yeah,
one
this
thing.
this may not be like as interesting or as in depth as like The Loust or Francis the Mute, which are, I think, both masterpieces. But it's a good album nonetheless, and I give it like a like a decent 8 out of 10. Honestly, I think it's great.
Yeah, I would similar score. I'd give it like an 8.
The more I've listened to it, I've warmed up to it a little bit. I think it's like a strong 6. It's not quite a light 7 yet. I think it probably will be at one point. You know, who knows? Maybe I'll listen to maybe I actually will hate Octahedron or Nocturniquet, or maybe I'll really like those albums, or maybe I'll do something and be like, never mind. Actually, this is better than I thought. It's an 8, but for now, strong 6.
All right.
Interesting album, ambitious album, but yeah. And I mean, the thing about the hooks is that there are great hooks on this album, But to me, that's not abnormal for the Mars Volta. Like, I remember all the choruses of the songs on Amputexture except the opening and ending, and I remember the choruses to all the songs on Francis the Mute and Deloused.
Right. Yeah, I can kind of see why it would be a little forgettable, but I still really enjoy it when I turn it on. It just kind of it has this sort of unique energy to it, and a unique feel that, I've
Yeah.
never heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
But-
trying to say that your opinions are invalid.
Yeah.
I'm
no,
more
of
just
course
kind of trying to say, like, I think I just kind of realized, like, why the hooks aren't as big a deal for me as they might be for someone like Max. Also, I want Max to say I have a boomer take. Can you do that? Can you get really close to the mic and say, "Shut up, boomer"?
Shut up, boomer.
Thanks. All right.
All right.
I
Okay,
have
so that-
been Ray the fuck. This
All
has
right.
been
So.
a bad episode.
No good for yet. I still have to do the outro. Okay.
Okay.
This has been the Esoteric Music Deathspiral. I have been Noisebandit. This has been Rei the Eldritch Enby and Princess Plunderphonics. Join us next time when we join an interesting band, a Scottish band, and a band so amazing that they did the opening for an anime. Goodbye.
Yeet. So remember how we talked about how the Mars Volta deliberately hid Amputexture?
Yeah.
I'm gonna deliberately hide this podcast by not